Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Ask Eddie and Ann. Ann, how are you?
I'm pretty good, pretty good. I'm on the eve of having gum surgery. So I will be spending the next couple days eating ice cream and watching movies while I recoup.
Well, all of that sounds great except the gum surgery.
Yeah, that part kind of stinks, but they give me Valium, so I'll have a legitimate reason to get high, so that'll be nice.
Yeah, I know. I once was doing something stupid and I trapped my finger in a clasp knife. It closed on this finger right here. It
Oh,
closed on it, and it hurt, but I knew it was going to be worse if I took the knife off.
yeah, you'll bleed.
So I kept the knife on, and Kathleen drove me to the emergency hospital, and all of that was taken care of. And it got stitches, which you can still see. But at the end, being a tough guy, they said we can give you some Percocet or something, and I said no, that's okay, I'm fine. And Kathleen reamed me out when we got in the car. She said, never turn down that stuff. You never know when you're going to need it, which of course she was right, because my back ailments over the years have always called for emergency doses of painkillers and stuff, but happily never abused, but they do come in handy. So I hear you. So hang on to your Valium.
Yeah, no, they give it to you in the office, and that's
And
it.
that's it. They don't let you take any
Yeah,
home with
you
you.
you get to take the Valium home. It's
Too
perfectly
bad.
for the
The
and then it's prescription
having
Tylenol.
I know, and before all the people watching this write in and say it, yes, I am aware of all the issues with this, and I have seen Dope Sick, the series, which was pretty good, and my friend Nick Jarecki's film Crisis, which is also about the opioid crisis, which was really good, and I highly recommend people watch that. If they don't want to commit to an 8-part series like Dope Sick, they can just watch Crisis, because it's like a 90-minute movie about the exact same subject. So and it's more like a crime film than Dope Sick is. So anyway, there you go. That wasn't what I expected to be starting with, but
We kind of got off topic.
there you have it.
Mm.
I will say, Anne, that I just got back from the opening weekend of the Noir City Film Festival in Chicago,
Hmm.
and it was tremendous. It was great fun being back in Chicago with the great fans there, and it was great. I mean, it was a little scary, in fact. The opening night of the James Caan tribute, the opening night of Thief and Flesh and Bone, was completely sold out.
That's
That's
fantastic.
that's as full as I've ever seen that theater. I mean, we have a tendency to say, "Oh, it was sold out," because nobody will take those last 10 or 15 seats.
Yeah,
This one was completely sold out.
awesome.
I mean, Chicagoans love Thief because it's such a classically Chicago movie, and it has so many landmarks in it, and the Green Mill and all that stuff, and so many of the actors are kind of Chicago icons. So that was great. But the B movie marathon went over like gangbusters, and I was astounded at how many people saw everything.
Yeah, all
Watched all
right.
6 movies all day long. That was terrific. It was really, really fun, and it was very gratifying to hear from people how they are regular viewers of our whatever this is that we do. They watch it
Yeah,
regularly.
it's a
So
good
I don't
thing.
know what we call this. Our program, our I don't know. It's not a podcast really, but
Yeah,
our program. They watch our
our program.
program. There
They
you go.
watch our show.
Our show. I like that. That's the best. It's the show.
It's the show.
They check
Yeah.
in with the show. So it was great all the way around. It was great. Alan Rohde is there right now, winding things up with some great movies. But by the time this airs, that will be over. So
That will be
let's
over.
not.
Yeah.
We're not telling you to run out and see movies at the Music Box. Well, we are telling you to do that, but they won't be part of North City.
Yeah, and also, and so, but we do have what DC to look forward to.
And Detroit before
Yeah,
that.
Detroit. Oh, that's right, Detroit.
Noir City, Detroit, the 23rd to the 25th. That's a 3-day festival. Chicago was a full week. But yes, we'll be in Detroit from the 23rd to the 25th at the Vintage Redford Theater, and then back at AFI Silver Theater in Silver Spring, Maryland, which we call DC. October, I just know it begins on October 14th and runs for, I think, 10 days. I will host the opening weekend, which is my birthday weekend. And not that I'm like soliciting gifts or anything from people who may attend. That's not why I'm saying that. But it's just interesting that I now often end up spending my birthday in Silver Spring, Maryland, which I think is kind of interesting. And then Foster Hirsch, the great Foster Hirsch, will be coming in to host the second long weekend of films. So that'll be great. Looking forward to that very much. Okay.
Okay. So we had talked via email to add a question tonight. So I was just going to start off with Lauren from Chicago's question.
Oh, since makes sense. Chicago person.
We
Yeah.
did North City, Chicago. So it seemed right. Okay. I was wondering if you could tell me why a major star as Alan Ladd rarely gets any of his movies shown today and has been all but seemingly forgotten, especially in the genre of noir. Here is a similar example to make my point. Most people of my generation only know Barbara Stanwyck as the matriarch of the Barclay family on the TV show The Big Valley. But thanks to TCM and many Noir City events, we've discovered a brand new perspective and appreciation on Stanwyck's career that had been overlooked and lost for decades. The same is not true for Alan Ladd. There are many of his films, especially noir films from the late 1940s and 50s, that never see cinematic light of day anymore. Why? Why has Alan Ladd been ignored? Why many of his contemporaries like Dan Duryea and John Garfield seem to be having a renaissance? And Eddie, to add further insult to Ladd, your network TCM, which Eddie is
my
not
network.
the president of,
Yeah.
in its long history has never once selected Alan Ladd as a star of the month. Your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting because I believe there is a practical reason for this, which Lauren sort of touches on in his postscript to the question there. Here's the deal. Like Stanwyck had a very long career, and her great films predated the noir era because she's also like the queen of pre-code movies as well. Which have had a renaissance. And I'm glad Lauren is giving Noir City credit for resurrecting Barbara Stanwyck, but it's not really true. Anyway, Alan Ladd became a huge star, and all of his fame basically goes from This Gun for Hire, right? A classic noir, through, I'm going to say, the mid 50s, through Shane and some other films in the mid 50s. And then his career really went into a nosedive after that for personal reasons. So it was a short period of time. And right in the middle of that period and he was with Paramount. He was signed by Paramount and was synonymous with that studio. But in 1949, Paramount, or not in 1949, but subsequent to that whole era, Paramount sold its pre-1949 library to Universal. So all those pictures that Alan Ladd made for Paramount in the 1940s were no longer Paramount property. They were Universal property. Jump cut. You may have noticed a little jump cut there just because we had a technical glitch, and now we're back. He made all of his pictures in the 40s for Paramount, but later on, Paramount sold all those movies to Universal, and they became property of a different studio. And generally, as time goes on, studios look to their back catalog and they say, who were our big stars, right?
Right.
So you see, like at Warner Brothers, like Bogart made most of his films at Warner Brothers, so in Casablanca especially. So he became synonymous with Warner Brothers, as Garfield was synonymous with Warner Brothers. But this didn't really apply any longer to Alan Ladd because Universal really didn't treat him like he was a Universal star, because he wasn't. He was a Paramount star. And they've put out some of his films like This Gun for Hire and The Glass Key and a couple of others, but they certainly haven't done all of that stuff. And the reason TCM hasn't done much with Alan Ladd, I suspect, is partially the same reason, because there's a lot of confusion over the ownership of the films. Some of those films kind of disappeared completely, like Calcutta and Saigon, a movie that he made with Veronica Lake that you just don't see anywhere. So these pictures are owned by the studios, and it's not like they're lost, but they're just kind of lost in an administrative limbo, if you will. And then, of course, his last big picture, at Paramount, not his last one, but The Great Gatsby, sort of fell off the radar because when it was remade in the 70s, they didn't want people to see the earlier version. And then there were the issues with the underlying rights to the Fitzgerald novel. So really, until the Film Noir Foundation sort of resurrected The Great Gatsby a few years ago, at least in theatrical screenings, you just couldn't see it at all. But because we can show the film theatrically doesn't mean it can be released in any form or shown on TV or anything. So that's part of the reason why Ladd has kind of diminished. Also, I just think that other stars rose in people's estimations, especially Robert Mitchum, who became sort of synonymous with that laconic thing he did, was synonymous with the noir era. And Mitchum's Tude plays better for a younger generation than Alan Ladd's did. But, having said that, it would be wonderful to restore all of this. It's also kind of odd that this happened, considering that he had two sons who were big hotshot players in the movie business. Alan Ladd Jr. and David Ladd were both very powerful guys in the movie business. But Alan Ladd Jr. was at Fox, and it didn't mean he had any access or inclination to save and distribute his dad's movies. And then later on in the 50s, Alan Ladd started his own production company, Jaguar Productions, and those films have become problematic because of rights issues and things, because Jaguar eventually was disbanded. But figuring out who had the rights to the films and what was possible to do with them was really, really difficult. That's why like a movie like Hell on Frisco Bay just disappeared for decades, until finally Warner Brothers was able to clear up all the legalities and reissue it as a Blu-ray. I think it's a Blu-ray. I think it took so long that they skipped DVDs entirely and it ended up going to Blu-ray first. So anyway, that's the Alan Ladd story as I understand it. Okay, so do you want me to take the next one?
Yes.
Okay, in a previous Ask Eddie, in which you displayed your fantastic finds of lobby cards from an antique market, you mentioned that you've been thinking a lot lately about the film The Crimson Kimono. This is one of my favorites. Any reason you've been thinking about it lately more than usual? Any new thoughts about the film? It may not qualify as noir for some, but it has beautiful cinematography, and the film's final message is almost like a key out of Noir Alley. We all have to solve our own case. And that is Natori, who is asking that question. Anne, are you a fan of The Crimson Kimono?
Oh, I love that movie. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
Yeah.
It's rough, which I love because it's a Sam Fuller movie, so it's not as polished as some other films of that era. But I would like to see it get more love as one of the final films of the original noir movement, right? Because everybody talks about, Odds Against Tomorrow and Touch of Evil and all this kind of stuff. But, you know, there's also Murder by Contract and Blast of Silence that are very edgy, newer films. And the Crimson Kimono is like right between the two. It sort of predicts edgier, new wave style filmmaking while it's also classically structured like a traditional Hollywood movie. And just in terms of his the sociology of the film, I mean, Sam Fuller was just so far ahead of the curve with the way he handled the issue of a Japanese American falling in love with a Caucasian woman on the job, and competing with his partner for her. And it's a really terrific movie, and I love Anna Lee in that film.
Oh,
She
she's great.
plays, but the reason, Notori, the reason I'd been thinking about it recently is because, quite honestly, I'm doing a cocktail book, and the Crimson Kimono is one of the cocktails that I created for this cocktail book. So, made with Japanese whiskey and Bruto Americano liqueur, because what more aptly describes Samuel Fuller than Bruto Americano? So it has other ingredients as well. But that was really why I had been thinking about it so much lately. But I agree with your assessment, Notori. It's a terrific movie and kind of an essential movie. And as much as people talk about Sam Fuller and what a great filmmaker he was, I don't think he gets enough credit for how far ahead of the curve he was on so many things,
Yeah.
Like China Gate, his war film China Gate is the first film about Vietnam.
Yeah.
It's the first film to actually consider the politics of what was going on in Southeast Asia in the 1950s. Before anybody else even was aware of it, he was making a movie about it. So he has that newsman's nose, for what's a good hot topical story. And then he's just so great about making those, making them in such a punchy Sam Fuller style. It's great.
Okay, this is Paul from Crescent City. Help with these movie jobs: best boy, grip, and gaffer.
Okay, those should be listed in the almost opposite order in the credits, because the gaffer is the chief lighting electrician on a film. So when you gaff the set, you're the guy in charge of all the electricity that lights it. So that's the gaffer's job. And the best boy is the chief assistant to the gaffer. And why he's called a best boy, I have no idea, other than he's like the number two. And it sounds to me like it was an expression born of like an apprenticeship relationship, where it's like, if you're my top apprentice, you're my best boy. Yeah. And so I think that's where it might come from. And what's an interesting question is, which I don't know the answer to. Maybe if somebody is watching this who works in the film business today, they can tell me if women are best boys on a film set, or if they're, because I can't imagine they'd be called best girls these days.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of curious what the title is for that job when it's performed by a woman. And a grip, of course, is involved with the rigging, all the technical rigging of the set. Not the electricity, just the gear, just the equipment and the building of light stanchions and scaffolding and all that stuff. That's what grips do. So the key grip is the guy who's in charge of all the people who build the stuff on the sets, and the gaffer is in charge of the electricity. That's how that works. Okay, me now. Okay, Kingpin Johnny from Doylestown, PA. He wants us to talk about Jim Thompson.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you rank him in the crime fiction firmament, and do you personally like his work? And can we talk about his impact on films, both as to the many neo-noirs adapted from his novels and as to his brief collaboration with Stanley Kubrick on The Killing and, interestingly, Paths of Glory. Okay. And I like when you went, when I said Jim Thompson. So what's your take on Jim Thompson?
I am a fan of Jim Thompson. I think he's a great crime writer. I don't really know. It's kind of hard. He's very much his own writer, which is something I like about him. Like, you can't really lump him in like with Hammett and, you know, Chandler and those guys. Like, it's something really different.
I agree completely.
That. Yeah. And I just remember the first time I read The Getaway. You know, I got to that ending, which is insane. And this is true. The next month, I spent reading P.G. Wodehouse. Just to kind of like chase
palate
it
cleanser.
Away,
a palate cleanser.
Like, I needed something to get out of that dark space. And then actually, the first time I tried to read The Grifters, which was actually before the movie came out, I had picked it up. And I got to kind of the first scene when you realize there's something really wrong with his relationship with his mom. And I couldn't finish it. I really freaked out. There was something about the way he wrote about that was really unnerving. So I didn't actually read it until after the movie came out. And then I talked myself into reading it.
It's not like that weirdness wasn't in the movie. I mean,
yeah, it was, but something about,
yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
You know what I
and
mean?
also there's in The Grifters, there's the really uncomfortable stuff with the nurse.
Yes.
Carol, you know,
yes,
that
very uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's kind of hard to take. But you know, I would say that, well, it's interesting. When you said that he doesn't really fit in that category with those other writers, right? Yeah. Who are mystery and crime writers. And I consider Jim Thompson to be almost the definitive American noir writer. And I would not hesitate to put him at the top of that list, right? Because even probably for me, more so than Cornell Woolrich, because Woolrich, he writes these twisted stories that are really compelling and suspenseful, but Thompson really delves into the psychology of these warped people, much more so than Woolrich does.
Yeah.
And for that, I do sort of consider him the ultimate American noir writer. And, you know, I would consider the two preeminent noir writers of that era to be Jim Thompson and Patricia Highsmith. I think those are the two. Look at all the movies that have been adapted from both of their, you know, from their bodies of work. And it's really interesting that, you know, there was this renaissance in the 80s, I guess it was. I can't even remember when The Grifters came out. Was that like 91 or something like that?
Yeah, it was in the 90s. And then there were several other Thompson adaptations.
There were a bunch. There was After Dark, My Sweet, and This World, then the Fireworks. And then there was a really good one that nobody's seen called The Kill Off.
Oh, that's a good movie. That's a really good movie, because that's a good book too, and it was a really good adaptation of it. I think that was a woman director.
It was. I can't remember her name right now, but yes, a female director, and it was good. I really enjoyed that. And then of course there was the Peck and Paw film and The Getaway. But that was a little before all of it. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that the supposed renaissance in neo-noir at that time was really a Jim Thompson renaissance. I mean, he just became hotter than ever, which he predicted, you know, because his books did not sell well during his lifetime. He wrote a lot of paperback originals that, like David Goodis, that got no respect from literary critics or anything. The French, of course, got it. But then he said, you just wait. He told his wife, when I'm dead, they're going to figure it out. And that's exactly what happened, which is noir in and of itself, right?
Yeah. And I would also like to bring up also The Killer Inside Me, the version with Stacy Keach, is an amazing film.
Yeah, Burt Kennedy directed that, and it's
Yeah.
totally overlooked, and it's actually it's weird. It's a very weird movie. Susan Tyrrell is in that as well, right? She's terrific. And then the version, I didn't like the version that Michael Winterbottom made. That was like, I don't know how old it is now, like 10 years or so ago, where Casey Affleck played Lou Ford.
Yeah.
I didn't like it for an odd reason. It wasn't that the very creepy, violence, where he beats the woman to death. That actually didn't bother me as much, I'm sorry to say, as the fact that the film was utterly devoid of humor. Yeah. And that, because the whole weird, sick, psychotic point of The Killer Inside Me, to me, is the psychology of this guy who knows that the badge allows him to exploit his authority to do all this stuff to people. Yeah. And he finds it humorous.
Oh, yeah. There's a scene because he also sort of acts like he's a little slow. And it's this incredible scene at the beginning where he's basically kind of fucking with this guy by being kind of slow. And
exactly.
And that was the beginning of it. And you're like, okay, I'm really hooked.
Yeah, he plays with people. He's like a psychotic Columbo. Like Columbo gone bad, Yeah.
That's a really good description.
Yeah, he puts on this act like he's an Okie, who doesn't really understand much, but he's really the devil,
Yeah.
And I just found that Casey Affleck's performance just was utterly devoid of humor.
Yeah.
And I just didn't get that. And so it probably would have been even more criticized if they had kept the humor in, Yeah. But anyway, and
I just wanted to put in about the badge thing, because in his autobiography that he wrote, I think it's Rough Boy, Jim Thompson told the story behind that character, which was that, there's a bunch of wildcatting in Texas at that time.
There's a bunch of wildcatting going on in your room right now, too.
Yes, the other kind of wildcatting.
They couldn't take this. They didn't like The Killer Inside Me either. So both Charlotte and Emily took a powder there.
You think Charlotte would like that? But anyway, so he basically had a job going down. So he'd be in the middle nowhere, pulling down the rigging that people put up for. Wildcatting is when individuals drill for oil somewhere. Sorry, I realized I probably should explain what that meant. And so he was out there, right? And this cop came up and was kind of hassling him and just kind of was Tom said he looked in his eyes and he realized there was something really wrong with this cop. And second, he was in the middle of nowhere. This guy just could have killed him.
Could do anything with him.
Could have done anything to him, and there would have been nothing he could do about it. So that was the inspiration for the character.
Yeah, really interesting. And as for his work with Kubrick, I mean, there's a lot of contention about that because Thompson was always upset because he felt like he really wrote the script for The Killing, based on Lionel White's novel, Clean Break. And Kubrick took a writing credit on it that Thompson did not really feel Kubrick deserved. And he left him with additional dialogue by Jim Thompson, which you can easily pick out in the movie. What's Jim Thompson, But it didn't hurt their relationship so much that Kubrick didn't ask Thompson to write on Paths of Glory as well, which is an all-time classic.
Yeah, it's a great film.
And as you may know, when Kubrick died, they found an unproduced treatment that Thompson and Kubrick had done for a film they were going to make together that never got off the ground, called The Lunatic at Large. And as far as I know, I mean, as recently as early last year, there was still talk about that thing getting produced. I know that Ed Pressman, the producer Ed Pressman, thought he was going to make that film like 20 something years ago, but it never happened. And I haven't read it. There's a script online that I don't really understand what it is, because it says, screenplay by Stephen Clark. And I don't know if Stephen Clark, if that's an authorized screenplay or whether he just somehow found or was connected to the 70-page treatment and just wrote his own version of it. But because I don't know if this Stephen Clark is attached to the film that was supposed to be going into production last year. But we'll wait and see what happens with that, because I see no listing for that film. I check in on that like every 4 or 5 months to see if there's any movement, and there isn't. There's nothing listed on IMDb, and I know of no, I don't know if it's in production or what.
Yeah. We should just probably just mention that there's been a couple of French films that were adaptations of Jim Thompson as well.
Well, Bertrand Tavernier's Coup de Torchon is fantastic. That was Pop 1280 that he adapted, and oh God, I'm drawing a blank now. Ciré Noir is unbelievable, and I'm embarrassed that I'm forgetting the director's name right now. But that's a terrific movie. It's a lot of great adaptations of Jim Thompson, that's for sure.
Okay, so I'm so sorry. I think I left the name off of this one. I'm so sorry. In the latest edition of North City Magazine, the article about J.T. Walsh mentioned several of his movies, including Red Rock West, which I hadn't seen since watching it on videotape a year following its release. After tracking it down and watching it again, I was reminded how much I enjoyed it the first time. I'm sorry. Oh, no, I see what I did. One of the trivia items under Red Rock West listed in the IMDb mentioned the film sat on the shelf for almost a year before being sold to Columbia TriStar. However, a theater in San Francisco asked to show it. Since Eddie's a San Francisco native, I wonder if he knows which theater it was and if he first saw the movie there during its run. And that's Michael from Post Falls, Idaho.
Okay. Okay, a couple of things. Well, yeah, I'll get to this part first. That was the Roxy Cinema in San Francisco that showed it. I also think the Roxy was sort of instrumental in booking Carl Franklin's One False Move and helping get that traction. I may be mistaken about that, because I also know that One False Move was championed by Siskel and Ebert, and basically got that film a national release. But it was the Roxy in San Francisco, and it played there for quite a while. I honestly cannot remember if that's where I first saw it. I remember seeing it when it came out, but it may not have been at the Roxy. I don't really remember. But I will say this, thank you for reading the magazine. Thanks for the comments about that J.T. Walsh piece by Steve Cronenberg. It was really, really great. And John Dahl, who directed Red Rock West, is the Film Noir Foundation's modern noir master for this year. The next issue of the magazine will probably be out by the time this airs, has a cover story on John Dahl, and he gives a long interview in the magazine. It's really fascinating about his career, because when it's very interesting how these things go now, because when John Dahl started making movies, he was like a little bit like Walter Hill, in that they were guys who were throwbacks to like the old studio directors, and that they were completely competent and adept with action pictures. And I always thought of Walter Hill as like our generation's Raoul Walsh,
Uh-huh.
And I don't know exactly what I would label John Dahl, but I know that all those first films he made, right? Kill Me Again and The Last Seduction and Red Rock West and Rounders and Joyride and this really weird thing he made with, I forget what it's called now. He made a really weird, like sci-fi B movie with Ray Liotta called, it was like Uncontrollable or something like that. That was pretty interesting. It was like a B movie, Clockwork Orange. I really thought this guy was going to be the greatest thing ever, and then the business really changed dramatically, and all those films were released in theaters, and then all of a sudden everything changed, and if he wanted to sustain a career, it had to be on TV. So John Dahl has, if you watch a lot of popular TV series, you've probably seen John Dahl's work because he's just directed everything, and Carl Franklin is very much the same way, and so was Walter Hill. They all kind of gravitated towards TV and then long form TV. I hope John Dahl gets the chance to make a feature film again at some point. Not that it's imperative, but I like him at that length. Anyway, so just a heads up to people to be looking for the latest issue of the magazine because he's a very interesting guy and he has a lot to say about noir and the business. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah. How did he get the magazine, Eddie?
You donate $20, at least $20 to the Film Noir Foundation. Thanks for setting me up, man. And we will provide you with a digital edition of the magazine, which means it is a downloadable PDF that you can read at your leisure on your tablet or laptop, or if you have really good eyesight, your phone. And it also comes out a week after the digital version. Then a print edition is available on Amazon, which people seem to love. But as always, I will stress that if you don't sign up for the foundation, we're not really getting any of that money because Amazon takes a huge cut out of the cover price of the magazine. It's $14.99, of which we get $1.99.
Yeah.
And they keep the rest, which, given that they have the ability to actually produce this magazine at the touch of a button and ship it to you, I'm not really saying they don't deserve a big cut because nobody else has been able to do that I'm aware of. If anybody out there listening knows of a service that can provide instantaneous single issue fulfillment, without creating inventory, let me know because I'd love to know there are options. But as of right now, Amazon does it, and they do a beautiful job. The magazine in print is sensational. It looks great. The paper's great. The color's great.
Yeah.
So I'm not really complaining. I'm just saying that you can't really think you're helping the foundation if you're only buying the print edition. That's all.
We're just not really getting the money from it. So get the print edition and then give us $20 anyway.
Yeah, there you go.
Because you always get the digital version first. So get a chance to look at it first before you get the print edition.
Somebody just came back, and I'm hoping that like she didn't do something terrible. Can you tell from this distance who that is?
That's Charlotte. But Emily's sitting. Emily's, you can't see her, but she's like on the floor.
Oh, okay. So she's safe. I just get nervous when I see two leave the room and only one come back in.
Especially when Charlotte's the one that comes back. But God, the other day I was talking to my friend Steve, and Charlotte was like on my lap, and then she kind of fell, so she like dug her claw into me, and I was like, "Oh man, that really hurt." And so I'm talking for Steve, and like I feel something wet on my leg, and I realize like I'm bleeding. So like I get off the phone, get my sweats off, and there's like blood running down my leg because there's this perfect circular like puncture wound. So I put pressure on it and it stopped bleeding, and then I had to put hydrogen peroxide all over my pants to clean them out.
Good.
Yeah. Good. So if you need to get rid of blood stains, everybody, hydrogen peroxide.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Hydrogen peroxide is the best. Take it from me. And Anne, I appreciate your story, but as you know, I can top that.
You can top it.
but we're not going to
We're
discuss
not going to
that.
do that.
No, we are not going to discuss that. But hydrogen peroxide, I have a butcher block in my kitchen, and every couple of months or so, I just put hydrogen peroxide all over it because it's great at disinfecting, cleaning it all out, and it kind of lightly bleaches everything, and it gets the stains out. So there you go.
Yes.
See, this isn't just about movie talk. This should be hints from Heloise.
No, I mean, I got red wine stains out of a white sweater with hydrogen peroxide.
Good job.
The bomb. Yeah.
Good job. And I'm sure it was just red wine and
it was just red wine and nothing
stains.
else. No, it was
Okay.
it was not blood stains. There were
All
no
right,
witnesses to say otherwise.
Well, Anne, I have a question that this one is specifically, I'll weigh in, but this one's for you. So I'm glad I'm reading it for you. Because this is from Richard, and he says, in The Last Cigarette, from the American Scholar, dated May 14th, 2022, author David Lehman says, cigarettes are the greatest prop of all time, an assertion that he illustrates with many examples, and he concludes, cigarettes. What a wonderful prop. So sexy. Too bad they cause cancer.
Yes.
And he says, do you agree? What are your views on Lehman's theme? And I love this question because when I first read this, I thought he was saying, do you agree that they cause cancer?
Yes, they do.
And it's like, well, I'm not one of those people that's going to come on and say, I disagree. My internet research says otherwise. I don't believe you can get cancer from smoking cigarettes because I saw on somebody's blog that they said it actually 6 out of 7 doctors recommend cigarettes to clear your bronchial ailments. Anyway, so Anne, would you like to take the first crack at this comment? What are your views on the idea of cigarettes as the ultimate prop? Since you smoke them regularly, I thought you should just take a crack at this. Yeah.
No, I mean, they're fantastic prop. I mean, look at Better Call Saul. That was basically the final
conclusion
sequence was smoking.
Yeah.
Which is how they and I always remember that first scene, the first time you see Kim and Jimmy together, and he takes a cigarette out of, cigarette and then smokes it and puts it, and it just said okay, well, these two at some point were involved, and then they echo that back. So I mean, it was just funny because everything that was just weird to me on that show because Kim smoked. It was so weird to see a character who smoked on a show because they just don't do it anymore. I mean, unless they're like a hard-bitten cop or something like that. But it was just really interesting to see a character smoke. And then when he was, in the desert and she didn't know what was going on, you saw her just sitting there smoking in her apartment, not even bothering to go outside, which is very unusual for her. So it's interesting that that's still, even though it's a very taboo thing to do in society now to smoke. It's interesting that it's still in our cinema and television because there's just so much you could do with it.
Yeah, totally. And of course, it is a daring thing to have characters smoke now. But back in the classic era, it was the most valuable prop an actor had. Mm-hmm. Because you can do so much with it because you smoke for so many different reasons, and it's so easy. If you're not a great actor and you have to convey nervousness, you got the cigarette to help you convey nervousness. If you want to show utter disdain, you know exactly how they're going to smoke the cigarette to convey that, and Bogart had his way, of smoking the cigarette versus somebody else who, Jack Nicholson had, this, he would do it this way. And it's fantastic prop. And everybody used to smoke. Everybody used to smoke. It was just so incredible. I know when I was making a film way back in my teen years, I was shooting a student film, and I got an office to shoot in downtown San Francisco from this older woman whose office it was. And when we were shooting a scene in the hallway, she said, "This is all wrong." And I said, "Why?" Because I had all the clothes were perfect, and it was a period thing. And she said, "Nobody's smoking."
Yeah.
She said, "We all smoked." And I said, "Well, but they're indoors." And she said, "Who cares?" I mean, we smoked everywhere. We smoked in bed. We smoked at breakfast. We smoked in the elevators. So yeah, there's a lot to that. And also, I just want to give a shout out because I should have the book at hand almost, but because I blurbed it. But David Lehman's book, Jesus, the name of which I'm sad to say is escaping me right now. But look, you can look it up online. It's Lehman. Has just come out, and it's about the spirit of noir. It's like something in murder and the mystery and murder and the spirit of noir. And that essay about the cigarettes, is in the book. It's a really, really interesting book because he's also a poet. And so he has an interesting take on these things, and he comes at various aspects of the genre from unusual angles, like that he would focus on cigarettes, and it gives me a chance to say in the next issue of the magazine, we do a similar thing with lipstick. Nora Fiore, the nitrate diva, who is a wonder on social media. She has become such a valued contributor to the magazine, and she wrote this wonderful essay on the use of lipstick in film noir with all these great examples. And quite honestly, when she pitched the idea, I thought, what are you going to get out of that? Not much. But she got a fabulous essay with all kinds of wonderful examples where she notes women use lipstick the same way that cigarettes are used in noir. Like, at what point do you decide to reapply your lipstick, and how do you reapply the lipstick? And it's really a great piece. So there's a plug for that too.
Cigarettes. Sorry, seeing where we
are. I think on my list, we're at number 7.
Yeah. Okay, great. And this is Marty from Fond du Lac. I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Fond du Lac. Fond du Lac. Okay. I did scan this, and it's a really interesting question, but it's kind of hard to paraphrase it. So give it a shot, Anne.
I think I'm just going to read the whole thing. My question for you both is, do you feel that film noir tapped into the human experience of the time of post-war trauma, greed, violence, and paranoia that hasn't been replicated since because most of the artists weren't afraid to address those themes in their work? Do you feel the reason we gravitate to these films today is because of that honesty that is missing in films today? Even though it's the same as ever, where artists are afraid or say it's already been said, so why do it again?
Yeah, so I read this question a couple of times, and I know what Marty is suggesting, but I have to respectfully disagree that artists aren't doing the same things today, because I think they are. But what I think is different is there wasn't as much being produced back then. Right? I mean, there were 8 movie studios. They suddenly, they controlled everything that was going up on the movie screens in America. So you could, when you had an organic artistic movement like noir, that clearly was more adult, and because of that was attracting artists who, writers, directors, and actors who were a little fearless in wanting to tackle more difficult and darker themes. They were done through the studios. And so because of that, it was very concentrated, and you could see that it was an artistic movement. I think today we absorb this stuff in such a fragmentary way, like where we get our entertainment, that we don't see movements happening.
Mhm.
The only movement we see is superheroes.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that has been, when they write the history of Hollywood movements, if you write that 30 years from now, it's going to all be about superheroes because that's the only obvious movement that has happened. But I would argue that, there's stuff being written that's just as tough, that's darker even, but it doesn't necessarily conform to the genre like the movies did back in the 40s and 50s. So that's why it doesn't seem like it's happening, but it is. I mean, when just to cite Better Call Saul as an example, I mean, that's kind of an amazing show. The places that went and where Breaking Bad went,
Mhm.
where a lot of these long form shows are going,
Yeah.
especially ones that are based on crime, or how about, you know, the stuff that's based on true crime,
Oh yeah, that's a
that are
huge movement
fictional
now.
films but based on true crime. In fact, I just did an interview a few days ago for Parade magazine where they asked what's behind the trend in true crime, right? And I said, well, it's not new. This started back in the early part of this century, where I think the society had gotten so bad and so corrupt and so violent and so fraught with paranoia and all of the stuff that they tried to warn us about, that we could no longer accept fiction, right? Fiction couldn't keep up, so everything had to be based on a true story.
Yeah.
I think if the majority of the public given the opportunity to watch a murder drama that was made up fiction, Postman Always Rings Twice,
Yeah.
versus Dirty John, which is all based on a true story, and they're going to take Dirty John every time now.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure why that is, but I can, uh, you know, it's bizarre, and it almost feels to me like today the subversive thing would be somebody making a film with an optimistic ending, right? That would be so weird. Like, seriously? I mean, this is crazy, because reality has just so outpaced fiction in terms of the level of corruption
Yeah.
that people just, and I've said this before, that people now watch film noir as comfort food
Mhm.
because, oh, didn't they look great being criminals back then? Because our criminals don't look so stylish anymore,
Yeah, they don't.
So no. So anyway, that it Marty raises a very complicated issue, but I don't want to sell modern artists short. It's just they have a hard time generating any kind of movement because it's just too fragmented. And also back then, the people who created these things came from writing novels, working in newspapers, writing stage plays, all that kind of stuff. The writing was number one, and that is actually no longer the case. So what you get is people who say, "Here's a true story that'd make a great subject," and this guy wants to make it, and then they hire a writer to just adapt the true story to turn it into a crime film. And it's hard to say that there's you know any real artistry going on there, although there is. But anyway.
Yeah, and I think too, in terms of things that are actually sort of like, narrative films, cinematic films that aren't superhero films. I think the fascinating thing for me is with horror is really one of the few genres that has really kind of lasted. and that you do see movements through even now. It's kind of interesting that
Mm-hmm.
that one
Mm-hmm.
and those. I mean, horror's always talked about gender and politics and race and a lot of things that more expensive films don't really deal in. And
Right.
it's just been interesting to see that is just there's just a consistent audience for it. So it's one of the few genres I think that are still viable
Right.
for people to go out and actually go to the movies to see.
Yep. I totally agree. You raise a really interesting point because that's why I love genre movies, because the conventions stay the same, but the way they're handled always changes, and that
Mhm.
tells you more about the times
Oh
than
yeah.
a movie that is and allows you to compare the attitudes and the mores of the time. Because if you're writing something that's specifically about something that could only be happening in this one specific time,
Yeah.
then it's a time capsule. And it's not really reflective of the changes in the society. It's just pinpointing this one moment in time, So, anyway, very interesting question, Marty. Okay, Diane says, I am a fan of the actor Rod Taylor, and there's a TV series pilot he did in 1962 called Dateline San Francisco. For many reasons, I think this would be right up Eddie's alley. Have you ever seen it or heard of it? And then, as an interesting second part of this question, Diane asks, before home video, do you think there were cases where directors or screenwriters were actually running prints of older films or reading the scripts? Well, I'm just going to get that one out of the way quickly and say absolutely. I mean, yes,
I
directors
think
and
that may have been
producers.
an editing mistake on my part, but go ahead with what you're
What?
saying.
Oh, is that not what she's asking?
I think that may have been from another. I can't remember. Go ahead and answer. I may be wrong.
Well, it sounded like she was asking
Yeah.
before home video, like how would people see,
Oh no, you're right. This is sorry. Go ahead.
how would people see the work of other people
Yeah.
if it wasn't in a movie theater? And the answer is yes, they had screening rooms in their homes. I mean, it was all producers in Hollywood had a screening room built into their home, and they would have projectionists, and they would come in and run the films. And of course, they read scripts, or they had people read scripts for them. I mean, any producer or director had people on staff who were the readers. I mean, that's always been the case.
Yeah.
So yes, they'd hear like, man, did you hear that Mark Hellinger's making this picture, The Killers, And they'd say, get me a copy of that script. And, they'd figure out that was somebody's job, was to go get a copy of the script. And I definitely remember hearing somebody talk about when John Huston was screening The Killers at his house. And somebody calling Robert Mitchum and saying, Ava Gardner's there, you better get over there right away,
Yeah.
And as for the pilot, I have not seen Dateline San Francisco. It does sound indeed right up my alley. I don't know, Diane, if you would be so kind.
It is in the email. She sent a link.
She sent a link. Okay,
Yeah,
give me the link because I would love to see the show. But I will say this: I know it never got picked up, and if in 1962, I can suspect. My lighting is changing again. If you've no doubt noticed that,
This was like in dark, surrounded in darkness.
It was all natural light. That's why, and the sun is going down. So now I am literally just lit by the light from my computer screen.
Man, we both need someone to pop out behind us.
Yeah, it'd be good. So anyway, we're gonna have to wind up pretty soon because I won't be visible. But in 1962. I know this. There was another very popular San Francisco-based TV series that began in 1962 called Sam Benedict, starring Edmund O'Brien. And he was playing, talk about based on a true story, he was playing an actual San Francisco defense attorney named Jake Ehrlich. That wasn't his name on the show, but everybody knew that's who this character was based on. Jake was very, very famous. He actually was friends with my dad. and they based this TV series on him. And it's really, really good. You can get it on DVD, the whole series. And I think like Richard Donner directed a number of episodes. Ida Lupino directed a number of episodes. Paul Henry directed episodes. It was a really good show. I think it lasted for 2 seasons. And Richard Rust is his colleague. You know, the guy from
Oh yeah.
Underworld USA, the hitman from Underworld USA. And anyway, I think they probably said no. They've already got one hit show about a guy in San Francisco, so I think we missed the boat on that one. Okay.
Okay.
Number 9.
And this is kind of two together because they were similar, and I just thought it'd be good to kind of take both of them at the same time. And this is from Liz from Hillsdale, New York. Excuse me. Can you or Eddie think of any noir scenes in non-noir era films? And then we also had from Paul in Seattle. I recently saw the 1946 Lucille Ball, John Hodiak romance crime film, Two Smart People. It does have a lot of elements of noir in generally crime films of the era, including a large part for Elisha Cook as a gun-wielding tough guy. What I want to suggest is the film is emblematic of the noir era in that it plays on the edges of film noir. In other words, there were just not noir films and everything else, but more of a continuum in stories. So so I think it kind of goes together. We can talk about some films that definitely have noirish things in them without being noir.
if you know of those, by all means, sing out. But that's kind of broad. It's hard for me to say, noirish scene in a non-noir film. I know exactly what Liz is talking about here, but it's kind of hard for me to pull out one. I will say that Two Smart People, I have seen the movie. It's directed by Jules Dassin, and he did it before he became that Jules Dassin, right? Before he made Brute Force and Naked City and Thieves Highway and Night in the City, all those classic noirs. So I really feel like he had all that in him already, and it was just itching to get out, which is why he kind of colored Two Smart People to have that feel. But I don't really think of it much as a noir film, right? It all depends. If you're like did Lucille Ball ever make noir? You tend to say The Dark Corner and Lured and then Two Smart People, if you want to go there, it's an add-on to that. But anyway, are there good examples you can think of readily of noir scenes in non-noir films?
Well, I mean, I think definitely like Seventh Victim by Val Lewton produced it. It has.
Hang on. I'm not disappearing. Okay. I'm just going. I'm going to try to go over here and turn on a light, but I don't want to. It's just more. I'm all wired up, so it's a little more complicated than it should be. But,
okay, well, I just don't want you falling.
Okay, this is really good TV, as they say in the business. This is really good TV. Okay, this isn't going to do anything for me, so I got to take the shade off.
There you go.
Okay, that did a little something. That did, and yet now people can see that I have an earpiece in, so that I can hear you properly.
That's why my hair is down like this. I had it in a braid. It was like my thing was showing. I was like, crap, I'll just put my hair down.
There you go.
It'll cover it up.
Very smart. Then I throw that back there, and now I don't look like a Secret Service man. Okay, very good.
Yeah, so I mean, I think definitely like Seventh Victim has a lot of film noir sequences in it. I mean, it's about, it's a horror film, but all of a lot of Lewton's films have a lot of horror in them.
Totally.
I mean, even though he was more of a horror director, like, Cat People, that whole, like, especially that sequence when she's with the sleazy psychiatrist. I mean, that scene feels very, like, it felt very noir to me.
Right. Well, I almost discount the noir stuff because I think they're so akin in many ways. I mean, if it's not, uh, I can think of like in that era there were the comedies. We've talked about this
Yeah, a
before,
lot of
but
comedies. Yeah.
like the Abbott and Costello stuff sometimes has noir elements in it. The Bob Hope movies, My Favorite Brunette and stuff like that is has intentionally, it's not by accident. They were kind of spoofing the whole noir thing. So The Good Humor Man with Jack Carson has all kinds
Yeah.
of noir stuff in it, and
Mm.
and for a comedy, it's people actually die in the movie, so
Yeah.
that's kind of bizarre. But I
Yeah.
should give this more thought because I know, and I'm also I would love to come up with some examples that aren't from that era, like later films where suddenly there's something that seems very noirish.
Yeah.
But what interests me about Liz's question is she's asking about scenes as opposed to movies that have a noir style, even though they weren't from that era. Like I'm thinking of like those movies that Alan Pakula made in the early 70s, like Clute and the Parallax
Hmm.
View. They look very noir because of Gordon Willis's cinematography.
Yeah.
And but they're. I mean, you can argue that they are or they aren't, but they certainly weren't made then
Yeah.
in the classic era. Okay, all right. So coming in towards the end here now.
Yeah.
One more time, we're going to get this question.
We hadn't answered it in a long time, so I thought I'd
but it's time.
Viewer viewers.
But it's timely. This is a timely question. And Reed asks, which is your favorite cinematic version of Philip Marlowe? Okay. So as this has been asked, Reed, a few times. I am going to say, I forget what I said before, but today I'm going to say Humphrey Bogart, and with Dick Powell, number 2.
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody knows, I think now, that my Marlowe is William Holden, who never got to play the part.
Yeah.
And somebody said to me the other day in Chicago, when I was presenting those James Caan movies on opening night of the festival, they said, "Don't you love James Caan as Philip Marlowe? Because he did it in a HBO thing called Poodle Springs." And I said, "No, James Caan is like the last person I would cast as Philip Marlowe."
Yeah. I mean, not that he's a great actor, but he's not Marlowe.
No, I love James Caan, but I mean, I love James Caan in Thief and The Godfather and all, but I just don't see him as Marlowe. I mean, he just seems too, like, it seems to me that if Marlowe went into somebody's office and instead of giving him back talk, he'd just punch him in the face.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't see James Caan.
You know who I would like to see play Marlowe? Joaquin Phoenix.
Joaquin Phoenix.
I'd really like to see him play Marlowe.
Well, he did. He did.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying it.
He played a very high Philip Marlowe in Inherent Vice.
Exactly,
yeah,
he did. But I'd like to see him play it like straight. Like I'd like to see him actually play like The Long Goodbye.
Yeah. No, I could see that. I think he's a fantastic actor, so I could see that definitely. Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Because he had that weird period where he kind of, I don't know whether that was performance art or what was going on, where he was like off the rails.
Oh, that's performance art. Yeah, that was with the beard and stuff.
And Casey Affleck was like making a movie of him being weird. Yeah. But it almost seems like when Al Pacino did Scent of a Woman, and then every movie he did after that, he was kind of big and over the top, Al Pacino,
Yeah.
And it felt to me like after Joaquin Phoenix did that weird performance art stuff, like he couldn't be normal after that, Like a lot of his characters were, like the Lynn Ramsey film, I Was Never Here, he was fantastic in that movie. but he's really like got several screws loose in a lot of the performances, which is not a bad thing. But it's like I'd love to see him play relatively normal again, just because I think he has a lot of gravitas on screen.
Yeah.
But you know who's done it, and because there is a new one coming out, there is a new Marlowe movie where Liam Neeson, all 70 years of Liam Neeson,
Oh,
is playing Marlowe. So it's hard to believe, but I'm trying to remember how old Robert Mitchum was when he was too old to play the part in Farewell, My Lovely in the
yeah.
70s. I still think Mitchum was in his 50s when he made that movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Liam Neeson is 70 years old. Granted, he is one fit for play, for a 70-year-old. But wow, that's weird.
Yeah.
So, and it's the character, but it's not a Chandler story. It's based on the John Banville adaptation of Chandler. The I think it's called The Black-Eyed Blonde or something like that. So my jury is out on that one. I'll see it, but I don't hold out a huge amount of hope.
Okay, so
Hold on. Oh, okay. Something was going on in the other room, and now I'm all foggy. There I
your
am.
focus is back.
Okay, something weird was going on in the other room, and then I realized it was my wife. She was printing from downstairs, and the printer just went off. And I'm like, oh, okay, it's okay, just the printer.
No demons.
Okay, so here's the last one.
Yeah.
Who's reading this one?
I'll read it because it's for you. John in Tampa, you have a golden opportunity to set up an enlightening experience for a select few noir fans. It's a mini festival with only 3 films. What 3 films do you feel should be seen by all noir fans, yet have the biggest chance never to have been seen by most of the attendees?
Okay. All right. So I get it. So it's like I'm not showing Double Indemnity. I'm not showing The Maltese Falcon. I'm not showing Out of the Past.
Yeah.
Out of the Past, it surprises me sometimes how there are a lot of people who have not seen Out of the Past, right? It's like, what the hell are you waiting for?
Yeah.
But I always say, if you haven't seen noir, you need to watch Double Indemnity. Well, those 3 movies, right?
Yeah.
I mean, basically. But because he says have the biggest chance of never having been seen by most attendees, I hate to say this, but I will say, well, I'm going to show them Film Noir Foundation restorations then. And I'm going to show The Prowler, and I'm going to show Woman on the Run, and lastly, I'm going to show Los Tallos Amargos from Argentina, because this is my thing now, Anne. It's like I'm an evangelist, and I want people to know that it's not, film noir. Here are 2 classic American examples of film noir that you've probably not seen or heard of. But in addition, you need to watch this incredible film from 1956 that's one of the best noir films ever made, that was made in Buenos Aires, to show that it was not specifically an American phenomenon.
I would definitely do Bitter Stems. I would have to do Repeat Performance.
Oh, okay.
Because I would have to get Repeat Performance in there, because I just feel like people haven't seen that, and that was, I love that film so much.
Okay, very good. Yeah. I mean, I would not classify that as like a classic example of film noir. It's a little out there, it's more Twilight Zone-y than your typical noir film. But you're programming it, Anne. You can do whatever you want.
And I would argue that the story is very, very noir. And also, I guess my third one would be Cry Danger, just because I love it so much.
Another Film Noir Foundation restoration.
Yes, I decided to pick all Film Noir Foundation restorations.
Good job.
And if you'd like to give us money to help us find and restore more films, you can go to filmnoirfoundation.org, contribute. You contribute $20 or more and sign up on our email list, then you'll get the digital version of Noir City Magazine as well.
Fantastic. And don't feel you have to stop at $20. I
No,
mean, that's
feel free to go higher.
feel free
You
to
can
go
be a
higher.
kingpin too.
Yes.
That's one of our
yes.
levels of membership. So
Okay, so we're bringing it in. We have brought it in fact, for a landing. And I hope people had fun with this one. I'm really looking forward to the next few months because a lot of stuff is happening, with the film shows and some interesting things that are developing in addition to that. And we're starting the run-up to the 20th anniversary edition of Noir City in the Bay Area, which I have programmed already. So I know what's coming, but I'm not talking about it yet. We will be shooting the poster for that later next month. I'm very excited about that.
I'm so excited.
Because as usual, I will force my way into the poster art somehow.
Nice.
And
big question, dead or not? We'll have to find.
I will be alive.
I
will be alive on the poster, but according to the storyline we've concocted, soon to be dead.
Yeah.
But the question is, who will kill me? That's the question. And I know the answer to that, but it's going to be a lovely surprise when it is revealed as to who our Ms. Noir City is on this upcoming poster. It's great fun. So anyway, Anne, this was great.
This is great. And I think that I'm hoping John Alton won't come and haunt us tonight for
well, this now when I'm looking at this, I'm seeing this is kind of more a Barry Lyndon kind of thing. This is kind of Barry Lyndon lighting.
Barry Lyndon thing.
Yeah, in honor of Kubrick,
right.
I'm making it look like this is just lit by candlelight, and in fact, it is a single light bulb over here that is providing the illumination. But I can't win. I gotta have a better lighting. I gotta get. You know what I have to get? I have to get a gaffer in here. And a best boy to help me set up my lighting. So there.
Well, I think we have to come to terms with the fact the days are getting shorter and we're going to have to use artificial lighting again.
Exactly. Onto the artificial light, like all true film noirs should be. So
exactly.
Anne, a pleasure as always, and I look forward to doing this again very soon.
Yes. So hopefully we will be keeping to our two-week schedule, and we'll be hopefully back in 2 weeks. And so North City, Detroit coming up, and then DC. So just to remind everybody.
Okay, perfect. And you notice the light just changed. That's because I closed a document on my computer screen. That's how much light I was getting just from an open document on my computer screen. So
yeah, my lights are really coming from my two monitors.
All right. And I just want to sign off by thanking anybody who's watching that attended the festival in Chicago. I want to thank you for coming out and making that such a great time and a fabulous success for the Music Box, because the theaters really need help coming out of COVID because they lost so much dough during the pandemic, and it's so great to see people back in movie theaters and socializing and being cautious, of course, but I'm hoping I hear no reports of people getting COVID during the festival.
Hopefully not.
But it was great fun. So I thank everyone.
Yes.
And Anne, we'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time. Have a good night.
Night. Bye.